Read for words. This is the story of Frederick Douglas. And Frederick Douglas is one of the people who worked to make our education system what it is today and make sure that everybody has a right to education, to an education, I should say. So, this is written by Shana Keller, illustrated by Kayla Stark, and it is published by, let's see, who is it published by? Doesn't say in the first couple pages. Interesting. Oh, here we go. Sleeping Bear Press. I know where I was born, but not when. It was Tuckahoe, Maryland. I'm going to turn this just a little bit. I lived free as a bird near the bay in a small cabin with Grandma. There wasn't a whole lot to do inside our cramped cabin, so I called to the birds, the frogs, the cats, and the dogs. I chirped and barked and squabbled until even the animals couldn't tell if I was one of their own. One day Grandma told me I would have to leave. Why? I asked. We belong to Old Master, she said. We are slaves. What does that mean? I thought I belonged to Grandma. They won't teach you a thing but to work, and you won't have a choice. But why am I a slave? I did not want to be told when to work, where to work, how to work, and not have a choice. Grandma was silent on the way we left the cabin. Early in the morning, we walked 12 long miles on a day swamped with heat and bugs to a place called the Great Farmhouse. When we arrived, children ran out to see me. They surrounded me, laughing and teasing me so. Then Grandma left without saying goodbye. I met my brothers and sisters at the great house, but I didn't know them. Without Grandma, I was too sad to play. Then I met Daniel. He lived in the great house. We hunted and hiked and fished together. Daniel occasionally shared his cakes with me. He showed me the great house and all the grand rooms inside, including his. Except for the color of our skin, it was hard to know why we were different. Daniel was not a slave. He wasn't born into it. At night, Daniel slept in a warm bed with a full belly. I had no bed. On the coldest nights, I slept with a bag used to carry corn. It wasn't long enough to cover my feet, so I put it over my head. I didn't have enough to eat or enough clothes to stay warm. I didn't even know my age, but Daniel knew his. You can see he's getting a birthday party and a birthday gift. When his tutor came, he taught Daniel to read and write and speak. I wanted to learn too, but Grandma was right. They didn't give me a choice. I was not old enough to work in the field. I was told to clean the yards, keep the birds out of the garden, and drive the cows. No matter how bad I wanted to learn to read and write, they wouldn't teach me a thing. It was illegal, they said, unlawful, unsafe. Why? I walked like them. I talked like them. I walked and talked exactly like them. I showed them I could. Is that why I was sent to Baltimore, far away from my brothers and sisters? I left the plantation the same way Grandma did, without saying goodbye. In Baltimore, I lived with Mr. Hugh Auld, kin to Old Master, and his wife, Mrs. Sophia. I was told to take care of little Thomas, their young son. City life was different from plantation life. There was plenty of food for me to eat and warm, clean clothes for me to wear. At night, I now had a good straw bed with covers. Mrs. Sophia was kind at first. She knew as little of slavery as I did. When she read to Thomas from the Bible, I followed along. To my surprise, she taught me what no one else would, my ABCs. She taught me how to spell next. I felt proud to know 3- and 4-letter words. She was proud of me, too. But when Mr. Auld saw what I could do, anger caught a hold of him. He should know nothing but to do as he's told, he said. If you teach Freddie how to read, there would be no keeping him. He forbade Mrs. Sophia from teaching me. From that moment, I understood the pathway from slavery to freedom. If I learned to read, I could loosen the chains of bondage. I couldn't give up, but how would I learn if I had lost my teacher? As Thomas grew older, I was told to carry his books and walk him to school. An idea came to me. I met a lot of hungry boys on the streets. The boys were between 9 and 12 years old. Was I as old as them? I remembered how I hated the pinches of hunger in my belly. This time, my hunger was different from theirs. When I was sent on errands, I always took my book with me, and I took extra bread. When I saw the boys on the streets, I offered them bread for words. It worked. With their help at different times and in different places, I finally learned to read. But to break free from slavery, I knew I had to learn how to write next. A new idea came to me in the shipyard. I watched the ship carpenters carve letters into pieces of wood to show which part the ship would be used for. I soon learned the names of these letters. They carved L for larboard or left side, F for forward, S for starboard, the right side, and A for aft, the stern. So if you look right there, there are all those letters. So he studied those letters. To learn the rest of the alphabet, I challenged the boys in the street who I knew could write. I said I could write as well as them. They didn't believe me. I carefully wrote the letters I had practiced. Beat that. Unable to resist my game, they wrote the letters they knew. I paid close attention to the ones I didn't know. At home, when Thomas finished with his copybooks, they were set aside and forgotten. I used the books to trace letters again and again until I could make them all without looking at the books. After nearly 7 years, I finally succeeded in learning how to read and write. Mr. Auld was right. There would be no keeping me. My chains had been broken. And then here's the story of Frederick Douglas. So, several years after finally escaping to the North in 1838, Frederick lectured as an abolitionist. An abolitionist is a person who fights slavery. He wrote countless speeches, worked for anti-slavery papers before he started his own, and penned 3 autobiographies. An autobiography is a story you write about your own life. Undeterred by assault, injury, or intimidation, Frederick Douglass became a magnificent orator, which means speaker, author, educator, and human rights activist. He died a free man in 1895. So that's a picture of Frederick Douglass. This is a true story about that gentleman right there. I think it's amazing what people will do to learn to read, to have the education. It's absolutely incredible. It's a powerful thing, knowing how to read and write. Thank you so much for reading along with me today. I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy a good book. Love you all.